We get a lot of questions about how math is taught in a self-directed learning environment. And I'll explain this in a minute, but it really does go back to the belief of the adults about whether or not we believe learners are able to teach themselves math. And our testimony is yes. Is it a struggle? Yeah. Is it hard? Yes. Is it worth it? Absolutely. So it's really three simple questions that we ask learners when it comes to them teaching themselves math. The first question is, what kind of research have you done to understand this struggle, this math problem that you're not able to solve for? And of course, with research, there's lots they can do. I mean, there is so many now today, gamified, responsive, and adaptive e-learning platforms that talk about every math concept you can imagine. And on YouTube, on internet search, learners can find great instructors, great explanations. And so we're inviting learners, say, hey, what sort of research have you done? And typically what we find is they've left some things on the table. They haven't quite done all the research that could be done and that needs to be done. The second question that we'll ask them is, who else have you talked to? What other learners, what other friends, what other peers, what other visiting experts that have come in recently have you talked to like help you think through this or explain the things to you? Or you can just kind of riff and share the challenges that you're having and pose some questions. And one of the jobs that we have as guides is to curate that environment, to make sure that they have resources for research, not just that, but also people resources, experts, peers, other learners who do understand the concept. So it's not that we're not directly teaching them math, but we are making sure they do have access to humans who know those math things. And instead of us being the ones as guides who are explaining it, we're keeping the responsibility on the learner to make sure they're the ones doing the research and they're the ones reaching out to others. The third simple question that we ask learners when it comes to learning math is, what have you tried? How have you experimented? How have you tinkered with it? Basically the scientific method. And what did you learn? Did you fail? If so, what did you learn from that failure? If you succeeded, what did you learn from that success? And what does that teach you about what you know, and then what you potentially still need to know? And we find that with those three questions, as learners navigate mathematics, that we believe that they can, if they have the right support and the right motivation, they can do the research on their own to explore it. They can tap their network and reach out to others. And they can also tinker and trial and error, learn from their successes or failures in order to learn not just basic, but deep mathematical concepts. Do you believe that? We believe that. And there are some instances, I will say as a caveat, where maybe a learner has some learning differences, where maybe they've gone through all three of those, research, reaching out to their network, and trying on their own, and they still are having issues. And we have seen that in the past. And at that point, a set of more nuanced supports actually makes sense. And we preemptively and proactively reach out to families and to learners if that's the case. But that's not the case for most learners. And so I invite you to consider your belief about learners' ability to learn math in these ways.
I would say I learned pretty well without a teacher because there's the teachers that you have are all online. And so it's a lot like learning what like other students had to do in public school with the online learning when the pandemic hit. And I would say it's harder in that you can't ask questions as much, and there's a lot more of you figuring it out. But when you do figure it out, you really get it. And another great thing about the school is that when other people are taking the same classes as you, you get to kind of like compare notes. So like me and Lauren are both taking calculus, and so I get to like hey, this is how this works. She's like, no, this is how it works, and we get to figure it out together. And then I also get to help some of the younger students with like algebra.
I think I know the basics, but more advanced things like algebra 2, because I didn't really get a good foundation on algebra 1 in traditional school. I feel like that kind of hindered me. So I'd say I'm ready for like the real world when it comes to math.
The main thing for me is you have to be motivated and determined, because when you don't have a teacher, when you run into a problem that you can't solve yourself, it becomes it's a lot harder than just raising your hand and getting information. For me, it was a lot of self-study. My math, the hardest one for me was I was actually taking it during like the height of the pandemic, so I was by myself and I didn't really have any peers. I would often, when I was in person, ask one of the other seniors who was a course ahead of me, and that often helped. But for me, it was a lot of self-study, and I'd have to pause and go research elsewhere to find it. And I feel, although it took a lot longer to get through those problems, I feel like I mastered them more thoroughly, and also was kind of rewarded with extra skills and determination and motivation.
And I thought about maybe hiring a tutor, but I was like, you know what? Before I get to that, there are so many different steps and ways I can knock this out by myself independently as a learner. The first thing I did immediately is there is another student, another peer of mine who has taken that exact same course. So I asked him. He was able to help me through it a little bit, but of course he can't be there with me every second of the day, which is kind of disrespectful to even ask that. But just with certain pointers and things to look out for, you can do that. I would also highly, highly advise watching all of the videos that Khan offers because they can be extremely useful. Taking notes, please do that. I know it's not completely like asked for, but that is super helpful, especially for Khan Academy. And I definitely think I've learned it. I'm almost halfway done with the class, and I definitely think I've learned it and can explain back to you a lot of the stuff that I've been able to learn.